Okay, welcome to the July-August edition of Protein Production Technology International. And today we're joined by Bruce Bennett, who is the President of Ingredients at Benson Hill. Bruce, thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And as a company, Benson Hill specializes in agricultural technology and plant-based food innovation with the aim of developing sustainable and healthier food options by utilizing cutting-edge science and technology. Now, before we delve into Benson Hill, though, can we have a brief overview of your journey into food and I guess more specifically food tech?
Sure. Well, thanks, Nick. So I've been working in this space for close to 30 years prior to joining Benson Hill. I spent the bulk of that time at a large agricultural manufacturer where I focused on specialty ingredients and building out high-performing growth platforms, and inclusive within those verticals covered things like nutraceuticals, fibers, emulsifiers, and specifically the global protein business, and that spans soy, pea, and other specialty grains. So had a lot of experience and exposure, but also had the opportunity to see all of the emerging trends and opportunities over the past several decades that impacts our industry today.
Okay, we're going to move on to the company itself now, Benson Hill. Could you provide me with an overview of the processes that you're using to develop plant-based proteins? I mean, what are the key steps involved there?
Sure. Well, at Benson Hill, we're a food technology company. And Nick, as you know, our mission is to set the pace of innovation in food, and we do that through leveraging our genetics, specifically our technology platform called CropOS, and that OS stands for Operating System. And the key there is that as our CropOS system is kind of guiding us in our development of our varieties, we first start with consumer insights or customer insights on challenges that the industry might be facing or immediate needs that might be impacting the food system today, and feeding that into our CropOS models to understand how can that capability from a genomic level help guide our development of our varieties to solve some of these or to provide solutions to some of these problems. And I think a key of where we're focusing, Nick, is that we're more zeroing in on how output traits or downstream traits that can affect food ingredients. How can we manipulate those to bring value to the food system, as opposed to just simply looking at how do we increase yield and bring value to the production side. It's more of a downstream opportunity that we focus in on.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of alternative proteins, you've been actively involved in R&D efforts to create protein ingredients for the food industry. What's your take on how the market has evolved recently and the demand for alternative proteins in, say, the past couple of years?
For sure. Well, I think even it goes beyond just a couple of years. I mean, this goes back to the very early stages of my career when we were seeing some real mega trends impacting the development of the plant-based protein landscape, whether that's things like the 2050 story with population growth, or the drive for more convenient foods, or rise of the flexitarian, or urbanization. I mean, the mega trends are many and they've been sustained, and that has helped fuel the momentum for a long-term trend in just additional accessibility and viability around the capabilities of plant-based protein. And you've seen over the course of time, in working with a broad base of different applications, markets, and customers, the industry respond. Certainly innovation is a very big part of that, but in stepping back and understanding how innovation has evolved, you've seen in the 60s certain extrusion types of processes to develop protein products. Then in the 70s and 80s, various isolation processes to develop higher protein ingredients. And then in the 90s, new development with products like crisps going into nutritional bars. But over the last probably 20 years, all of the development continues to leverage those same process technologies. So there hasn't been a lot of innovation around process, which is why it's exciting with Benson Hill and our innovation that we're looking at the front end of the system and developing better varieties from the beginning to leverage the current chassis, but do so in a much more efficient manner. And that's developing higher protein beans, for instance, that can then produce more valuable output on the ingredient side.
Okay, well, let's move on to those products more specifically and what Benson Hill offers the industry. What types of sources do you focus on for protein development? Are there any specific varieties that show promise for high quality protein extraction?
Well, for sure, as a company, and certainly if you look at the broader plant-based industry, we started with soy. That, of course, has been the key driver for many, many decades. And we've had tremendous success. I think one of the biggest challenges with soy over the last 20 years is the focus has been on yield development as opposed to quality protein development. And over time, you've seen yields improve, but at the same time, you've seen protein levels continue to drop. And in fact, over the last couple of decades, you've seen soybean proteins drop by over 10% during that time. And so that's having an impact on availability for protein manufacturers. And it's been a challenge that, we chose to address. And by growing higher protein soybeans, we're able to use those same type of processing techniques to produce high value, high protein ingredients, and in many cases, eliminate downstream processing steps, which contributes to a better cost efficiency, but also a much more sustainable platform for developing soy proteins. And we have a number of products ranging from high protein flours to high protein textured products that are being actively used today that we're excited about.
I mean, what are some of the unique features or characteristics of your plant-based proteins that differentiate them from other alternatives on the market? I mean, how do they compare in terms of taste, texture, and functionality, for instance?
Well, certainly our initial goal is to look at how can we impact the food system in a more sustainable, focused manner. That certainly underpins everything that we do at Benson Hill. We want to set the pace of innovation in food by not only providing high quality, great tasting, highly functional soy protein ingredients, but we want to do so in a way that impacts the environment and reduces greenhouse gas emissions and water usage, for instance. And by leveraging our ultra high protein soybeans today, we're able to produce very similar products to what are currently on the market, but with 50% reduction in greenhouse gases and 70% reduction in water usage. So we're not only bringing very functional, great tasting ingredients, but we're doing so with another value proposition around sustainability, which is actually desired by many of our customers like Kellogg's and their Morningstar Farms line, which we've announced in the past, because they have their own sustainability goals and they can leverage our ingredients to help them not only make great tasting downstream food products, but do so much more sustainably.
Yeah, I guess it's everybody in that supply chain has got to be meeting their exacting standards. Now, I believe that you employ a closed loop ingredient model, which goes back to the genetics of the seed. So could you tell me a little bit about that and why vertical integration is so important and what benefits that offers?
For sure. And I think that's a great question. And it really goes to a critical differentiator for Benson Hill as a company, because historically a big challenge with trying to develop through traditional breeding downstream output traits like higher protein or better tasting ingredients through improved varieties. The challenge has been that it's hard to get past the farm gate. You need to be able to demonstrate to your farmer partners that it is for them valuable to grow these type of traits, and it's not necessarily a yield benefit for them, but that there's a better margin potential for them. And to be able to integrate and elongate this supply chain and break down the barriers from the farmer to the farm gate to the processor to the food company, there's opportunities to manage that margin across the supply chain and redistribute that effectively so that the farmer can benefit, so that the processor can benefit, and so that the downstream CPG or food manufacturer can also benefit. Historically, that's been a challenge because you've seen this supply chain have these barriers because it's been broken up across the industry. By us connecting them, we're able to ensure that those economics flow freely, and that the benefits of the genetics are properly explained and pulled through the supply chain.
When you look at some of the other benefits there, you've got sustainability, you've got integrity of supply and traceability, and the ability to deliver consumer quality traits in a cleaner label. Focusing on sustainability, we'll unpack a few of these. What are the specific sustainability considerations that Benson Hill takes into account in the production of your proteins? How, for instance, do you address the environmental impact and resource efficiency?
Well, I think stepping back and talking a little bit about, the fact that we are a vertically integrated closed loop, the first thing that we have access to are farmer partners. And they're a critical piece in this process, and that we're able to manage and collect all of the data that is associated with their production. And that's very critical as we're assessing sustainability impact that we can offer as a service to our partners downstream in the food side who require that data to help demonstrate sustainability impacts and benefits. Secondly, it's the soybean variety in this case itself, and how we're developing better beans from the beginning with better output traits, whether it's higher protein or whether it's lower sugars that can impact flavor. All of this is happening, and we're enabling that with Mother Nature doing that heavy lifting as opposed to downstream processing. And by having that done in the ground where we're seeing that employed, we're able to eliminate processing steps. We're able to eliminate building expensive plants. We're able to eliminate water usage and energy usage that's necessary historically to remove or eliminate some of these elements like sugars to be able to get to the same endpoint with the proteins. We're doing that with our soybean varieties.
And moving on to integrity of supply and traceability. I mean, people are choosing plant-based alternatives for a variety of reasons, from reducing their carbon footprint, conserving natural resources, minimizing the negative impact of animal agriculture on the environment. So in that regard, sustainable and ethical considerations are key. And this is clearly something that drives a lot of your work at Benson Hill.
It does. And again, this goes to our relationships with our farmer partners. And as we have focused specifically around U.S. grown, non-GMO ingredients, our relationships with them are critical because we're working with them to ensure the integrity of our closed loop model, but also it guarantees that we have that visibility to manage the quality, to manage the production all the way through to support our downstream food partners as they're developing better food for industry. The other thing is that it enables us to assure that we're meeting certain certifications around the world. For instance, many of our varieties are ProTerra certified, meaning they've undergone very rigorous reviews with global standards around identity preservation, around non-GM status, et cetera, specifically deforestation. That's very critical. It's critical here in the U.S., but even more so around the world, where government regulations and oversight are being ratcheted up to ensure that products are produced and grown sustainably and ethically. So we feel like our closed loop model enables that, and we take it very seriously.
Yeah. Your ability to deliver consumer quality traits in a cleaner label. Now, how do you ensure the nutritional quality and amino acid profile of your proteins? Are there any specific techniques or methods employed to optimize these attributes?
Well, I think this goes back to leveraging the power of our Crop OS system. There are billions of data points that it is monitoring, tracking, and continuing to evolve to produce better varieties that address consumer traits and downstream nutrition. I think one of the things that we put a lot of focus on is ensuring that our products are great tasting, and one of those ways is by eliminating certain oligosaccharides or sugars like raffinose and stachyose that contribute to flavor impact, as well as gut distress or other challenges that you would see with oligosaccharides within your diet. By eliminating those, we're able to more efficiently and easily produce ingredients that can be incorporated in food, and at the same time we're also able to label many of our products as soy flour as opposed to soy concentrate, which in some cases can be viewed as more label friendly by the consumer.
Mhm. Now, I know that you view plant proteins holistically at Benson Hill, proteins for human consumption, animals, livestock, for instance, including pets. So pet food, is that a big market for Benson Hill?
So we're seeing a lot of potential with pet food, and it's an area that we're starting to put significant focus around, not only in working with customers, but also looking at how can we incorporate some of our new and evolving ingredients into studies to understand its impacts in the pet food segment. We already have a fair amount of work and success in the aquaculture industry in Europe. We've talked a lot about that and how we're delivering our protein ingredients into specifically the salmon and trout industries. And we're seeing a lot of transfer into the pet segment. But a big trend that has been ongoing for over a decade is this idea about, pet owners becoming pet parents and how they almost look at their food for their pets even more critically than they do for themselves. And so we're certainly cognizant and aware of that. But because of the trends that mirror, pet that you see in human, a lot of what we do in the human side directly transfers over to the pet side. So we're creating a lot of opportunity to create more nutritional ingredients for the pet segment. One of the challenges certainly with pet food is that they're very cognizant around their cost structure. And they currently use a lot of soybean meal in their diet rations. That can become a limiting factor for them to be able to add more protein just because of other elements that are associated with soybean meal. Because we can produce higher protein right out of the gate with our UHP and our own ingredients, it enables pet food companies to use more protein within their formulation so that they can produce a higher quality diet for pets.
Well, I am a pet parent and I have a Labrador, and even more specific, I have a silver Labrador, and she is very, very fussy about her food and also prone to getting illnesses and allergic reactions to certain things. So we've got to be very
Well,
careful what we're feeding her.
and I think we talked earlier about, oligosaccharides and its impact in the human stomach and how certain sugars can cause discomfort. That certainly is a very similar type of situation with pets. And so as we've developed our varieties to, be lower in these specific sugars, it's a benefit not only to pets, but even in some cases to their pet owners. You certainly don't want your dog to have an upset stomach. So anything that you can do from a diet standpoint is probably welcomed.
Yeah. Similar topic. I mean, one of the key challenges in plant-based pet food development is ensuring proper nutritional balance. I mean, how would you contrast that challenge with pet food to the human food sector?
Well, in stepping back, the key, I think, with how we're viewing the pet segment is that we want to assure we've got the highest quality protein with the lowest level of sugars possible, and that's been our strategy. We've had a lot of success in early studies that demonstrate that improves the viability of including, more protein in the diet, and we feel that that's a strong strategy for us to pursue.
Okay, final question now, Bruce. What do you think is, if anything, is standing in the way of companies and consumers embracing alternative proteins? I mean, there's a 1.4 trillion dollar meat market out there, and alternative proteins don't currently take up much of it. So, what needs to change?
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting question because over the last probably 30 years, one of the biggest areas of protein consumption has been in tandem with the meat industry. I think the way we view protein adoption and acceptance is that, it's not necessarily an either or when it comes to plant-based or meat-based. It's how do you improve food? How do you deliver higher quality food? And certainly one way of doing that is through plant-based foods. Another way of doing that, and this certainly appeals to many flexitarians, is how in tandem can proteins work together. And we've seen how supplementing a meat formulation with a soy protein can actually improve succulence and sensorial qualities because of moisture retention that occurs when you include soy protein along with a meat protein. We've seen in beverage industry protein blends that maximize the uptake of whey protein along with the satiety effects of a soy protein in tandem can be very effective and valuable for the consumer. So long term, it's as long as food tastes good, as long as food has high nutritional value, and as long as it's meeting the sustainability requirements of the consumer, we see those as reasons to believe in continued growth for the protein industry.
I mean, it's an exciting, dynamic industry. It's certainly really interesting to cover it from an editor's perspective. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Well, I think one of the things I wanted to point out about Benson Hill that is really exciting for me personally after having spent the bulk of my career in kind of the traditional realm of processing is that we take very seriously our mission on how we intend to set the pace of innovation in food. And it's extremely cool for someone who comes with a deep processing background like myself to be able to walk up a couple of flights of stairs and sit with the Crop OS team as they're managing and manipulating their plant science, data science, and food science through AI capabilities and developing food through that type of a lens to sit back and talk through from my perspective as an operator, how do we marry these capabilities to have dynamic and major impact on food? And it's not necessarily what can we do, it's what should we do? And those types of questions that we review together and the outcomes that we think through are really exciting, but also are showing how you have this intersection of technology tools along with genomics, along with trends under plant-based. That's truly, really exciting and why I get up and come to work every day.
Yeah. It's just the start as well. It's just the start. Look, Bruce, thank you very much I know you're a busy man. Thank you very much for spending half an hour with us this afternoon. It's really nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it.